Clap. Off we go.
Off we go.
Tea in hand.
Okay, hello everybody. Talking here to Guy
Hello.
Woods in Amsterdam, UK-based, Amsterdam-based, musician, producer, workshop leader, facilitator, devil child extraordinaire. Can you tell?
Very much.
Yeah.
What an introduction.
Sorry. Well, it's a little bit the truth here.
Yeah, definitely.
What I want to say, can you tell me a little bit about your first memories of making music or listening to music or anything that hooked you in?
Very early on, when I was 4 years old, I was provided with my first set of drums. My memory of actually receiving them and playing them is blurred, but I do remember very early this pull towards rhythm and towards making rhythm and sound and texture and also the equipment and the thing of the set of drums itself, the contraption, the drums, the skins, the way it's made.
Yeah, it's a monster.
Totally. And being fascinated with watching performing artists and drummers in particular.
Yeah.
And that came, my access to watching performers came through my mum and her involvement with theatre as an amateur performer.
Nice.
And as a huge consumer of
So
the theatrical arts.
Did you get a lot of support from your parents then?
Loads of support from my
Nice.
parents,
Nice.
you know, which is definitely a huge, big reason why we're sat on this couch in
Awesome.
Amsterdam
Awesome.
discussing music today, definitely.
Drummers
And
also
that-
seem to have the most fun as well. It's very attractive.
It is, yeah, it is, and I think there's an energy thing involved with it. There's also kind of just an inherent part of a characteristic to some point.
Yeah.
You know, it's an exertive, super physical. The energy involved, you know, is it's addictive in terms of the sound that you can produce and what it takes your body to kind of achieve that.
Mm-hmm.
And you can kind of get that from quite early on.
Yeah.
But then the glitz and glamour of the drums themselves and the sparkles and the setups and all the cymbals and the auxiliary percussion and, you know, and I'm an 80s child, so huge drum sets and the rock god era was my early idol.
Yeah.
And
Who were some
an
of the
early memory
names
was
of
like
your
Dire
influence?
Straits.
Dire
I
Straits?
went to see one of their tour dates. My mum took us along, and we managed to get photographed for the local press for being the earliest arrivals
Nice.
to the this venue. I think it was Farah, and that was the Brothers in Arms tour, and Omar Hakim was one of the drummers who I was particularly into as an 8-year-old.
Yeah.
And a lot of my, I grew up in the countryside in North England, and a beautiful city called York, which had and still does have a kind of interesting cultural scene. It's not huge, but there's a lot of reputation of some very good rock and roll bands and
Nice.
composers, and John Barry, the James Bond composer. He was at my school, and a great band from the 90s called Shed 7, a York band, and it's produced some characters, definitely. So that was kind of a good kind of nurturing ground for young bands, where I was part of rock and roll bands and stuff, and it was kind of a good pub gig scene that
Nice.
we were sneaked into as youths.
Tell me about your formal education. Boom, boom, boom. What's the trajectory?
Well, again, that began in New York at the school that I went to, St. Peter's School, and that had a strong link to music education, and it did have a strong music department. It's a great school, and the training is actually quite classical, and the education was quite traditional in terms of syllabus-based music education across the board in the UK at that time. And you learnt your recorder, and you had some kind of history classes, and then there was the ensemble play, which was wind bands and jazz bands, and there was a little mini orchestra. And
This is about high school
this
age?
is from 8.
Okay.
This is from 8 through till 16.
16.
Yeah. But there's also a very academic and a great sports school.
Okay.
And I was involved in sports quite heavily.
Okay.
And at some point the decision had to come. I was really lucky that in this quite conventional, traditional education setup, which is superb, it provided a really good foundation. I had drum teachers, peripatetic, just my one-on-one drum teachers, came in from the field, and one of them was a guy called Damien Harron, who plays for an ensemble called Backbeat, percussion ensemble. And he is also a drum kit player and a phenomenal musician. And we were watching Led Zeppelin DVDs and all this kind of stuff. He brought a huge inspiration to me.
Nice.
And then the other lady was a lady called Janet Fulton, who played for the Halle Orchestra. And was a superb orchestral musician. And she mentored and coached me into the traditional conservatoire education route in terms of being a performer and wanting to explore that route and that profession as well.
Yeah.
So she was, again, at 14 years old, I was super fortunate that I had this kind of very personal one-on-one instrument-based development alongside the school ensembles and me playing in rock and roll bands. So I left school at 16 and went to College of Music in Leeds to study what we call the BTEC program, which is a 16 to 18-year-old. And it was a mostly performance-based program, and looking at classical Western music. It had quite a lot of kind of historical content, and then solfege and that discipline training, skills training. And there they did have a very large faculty and a great jazz department.
Great.
And also still do a very good classical department.
Nice.
So I was with higher education students that were amazing jazz players and got access to their teachers and the drum teachers. And so then from there I got into the Guildhall School of Music on a classical program. But having been exposed to jazz for that last 2 years, I was super into that music and exploring it more and exploring the drum kit more. So quite quickly on, I managed to meet Sean Gregory at the Guildhall, who at that time was also running an outreach project called Connect. Yeah. And then he now runs a creative learning department at the Barbican. And he mentored me. And I was starting to do a lot of work for Connect and their social outreach programs as just a supporting musician and a drummer. And then swapped courses onto jazz degree, so I graduated in jazz and then did my master's there in the leadership.
Okay, at the Guildhall,
at the
Leadership
Guildhall,
Masters, Guildhall, What were you, when you were supporting as a musician, what did the workshops look like?
They looked like then, well, this is the beginning of my exposure to creative learning, non-formal education, participatory music making experiences, and all the rest of the words that can describe the wonder of the world that we work in. And the project that I got heavily involved with was called World in Motion South. So the Guildhall kind of works primarily with the East Range of London, the South East, East London, and a little in the northeast of London. And this project was based with young kids between the age of sort of 9 or 10 up to teenage years, who multi-instrumental. They were primarily all studying music to some degree and instrumental one-on-one tuition. And the demographic was super mixed, so some kids with super nice setups and some kids that had pretty difficult setups in terms of home lives and all the rest of it.
Sure.
And the project ran annually. We'd meet in the holidays, and it was project based, so we'd bring in themes or topics. And make art together, make music together as a large ensemble, 20 piece, larger sometimes, string heavy. It was run by a facilitator called Katja Mavola, who now lives back in Finland.
Okay.
And her partner as well, who's an amazing bass player called Nathan Thompson. And he is also a great facilitator, works in the world music industry, great performer. So they were coming from this quite literally radical approach to learning quite complicated music. There was a lot of East European influence in the music. There was a lot of odd time signature work. So as an 18, 19-year-old drummer, looking at how you could create group compositions together with facilitated but learning young people.
Quite complex
Very
music.
complex music. That was really inspiring.
How, a lot of the people who might be listening or watching this, it's a little bit vague what a workshop might look like. Is there any way, like a brief way you can just kind of, I know it's a big question because each workshop is context based and, depends what the project is, what you want to achieve with the outcome. But can you give us like a little breakdown on what a creative collaborative composition workshop might look like?
Yeah, well, I suppose it's always defined, as you said, by its context as a framework. But for me, my approach to it is beginning from finding a neutral place, finding a place of common understanding and trust with strangers within a very short period of time, and taking that group and helping to facilitate that group of people on a unified journey towards some end goal.
Yeah. Nice.
And it's finding a way to take someone's highest point and match that with other people's highest points, which are always going to be slightly higher than the next, and it's finding that assimilation as a group to create art. And that is also like the super important part. It's about ownership and creating new music, and also music that may be recorded but often will never be repeated live, due to the project nature of workshops.
Yeah.
The structure of them, you'll begin with group integration, team building. It works across many fields, and the professional industries use the same techniques, and coaching and training, and obviously the other arts disciplines, and dance and theatre. I have a huge practice in that approach. So you begin with a playfulness and a team building, and you do that through a variety of manners and methods, including verbal, non-verbal exercises, including musical exercises, if that's relevant.
Yeah.
And then you'll move on to introductory, skills learning, potentially, if that's the case, or drawing out musical ideas through a variety of methods that might be musical improvisation, that might be led composition-based practices, body percussion, vocal exercises.
So this is all done by the group. It's not like they're receiving it from a person, they're actually integrated.
Everything happens by the group.
Yeah. Yeah.
And within all these early platforms, you'll have a facilitator there to lead the process.
Yeah.
But the aim is that you're finding the confidence or the personal identities, musical and non-musical, within these early stages of approach, as well as initiating and introducing musical ideas that you need to develop for the group and with the group for the music that you're making or trying to make together. For example, you come in with a repertoire-based workshop, you have to do a workshop on a piece of repertoire.
Yeah.
Then you may find the core ingredients of that repertoire and disintegrate it into its, small elements, rhythmic structures or harmony. So you may have a palette that you're going in as a facilitator into that workshop with, and then these early stages of trying to apply confidence into the participants and some learning, I suppose, if you have something to actually teach them. And if you don't have something to teach, if it's an open access, completely 0 point, then your role as a facilitator is to draw out the musical skills and the musical input.
Sure.
And as I said, then it's improvisation, it's place-led composition work, it's
So you're going to be
jamming.
like, drawing out musical material from that group work.
Sure.
Right there.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
What then?
And then you go on to trying to, well, again, depending on the context, perhaps exploring more improvisation work based on the thematic ideas that you're trying to work with. It might be, again, going into more small group skills training stuff that you might have to, you've got a group of percussionists that have to learn how to play their shakers and their tambourines. You've got a group of keyboard players that need to find where the C and the D is. Along with that, that's always placed about creativity, trying to draw out what they can do, what they can't do.
Okay.
So, it's playing along with someone else supporting them that can play along. It's it's pitching the right people together. It's where your workshop assistants come into play.
Sure.
They're bringing that musical skill, their bed, so that then they can learn it. And if they can't play that, you can quickly adjust what's going on for them something to play.
I wanted to ask about these assistants actually, because that's interesting. What's the background of these assistants? Are they practicing artists, musicians, semi or fully pro musicians?
Yeah, most of the time these are, it might be students, for example. Who are on training programs, bachelors or masters. It might be young people that are in arts organisation projects that have mentoring and training and professional training and development within those setups. They might be orchestral musicians that are working alongside workshop leaders to do a project.
Most of the time they're relatively highly skilled, proficient musicians.
Yeah, most of the time, and that's also which is a very key philosophy of the work, is this trying to integrate the amateur professional divide on a more understood, respected and creative kind of approach.
How does that influence the participants, the young people that are working? Like, what are some of the things you see?
It's all the time. It's about any demographic, young, old, vulnerable, non-vulnerable. It's that is always it's part of our condition, I think, as humans, isn't it? The idolization thing and looking up to peers and to get influence. And ideas and creative inspiration, but there's a danger when that becomes a suppressant, I suppose. And this is what this work does, because it's all about group ownership and bringing not just the individual empowerment, but the realization that you can empower yourself more by a true and proper union with other people, in the community, etc. And that's it's a hyper powerful happening. For sure. And the effect is quite difficult. It's not our role also as arts facilitators to be able to quantify the social effects or stuff. But the participants always get as much as the facilitators get, which is always, when's the next one going to be happening, when's the next project.
Exactly.
And which is also the other thing, is the sustainability of the things. These, unfortunately, is always conditioned by the funding issues that they have, and continuity and exposure, and that's a really important thing to kind of address and to keep on.
What's the difference then, like from a one-off workshop or a series of workshops, or even some more consistent work with a group?
Well, it becomes experiential. I mean, it's an experiential approach as a one-off workshop. there's not a lot more that can happen.
Yeah.
It's also again, the impact is you've no idea.
Yeah.
So it might impact some of the participants on a level that you're never going to know, because you won't be going back there again. And it's also just not enough time to see development. Long-term projects, have got way bigger effect in terms of the actual social impact and political impact. And cultural impact, and absolutely, it's the best endeavour.
Yeah.
The work needs longevity, like any other arts practice. It needs to be given its space and its
like gardening.
fluidity. Completely, it has to grow, and that's where quality comes into the work practice. Also, with the one-off workshop is how you can, in one day, for example, make a group of non-facilitated instrumentalists come up to a level that the audience perceive that as being the right level of quality.
Yeah.
Other than just being like, isn't that nice?
Exactly.
And that is super important to work with.
How do you bring
it shouldn't just be, that's nice.
Yeah, exactly.
The art needs to push up. And it is doing, this last few decades, there's some incredible work being done taking these approaches. For sure.
How do you, on a practical level, how do you get that out of the participants, that level of focus and idea of quality? Is it the influence of the facilitator and the helpers? Is it something that's verbally addressed? This idea of quality and just...
Well, it's definitely dependent on who's artistically leading the project and their aims and their goals for it. Because also, what is also important with social engagement work is that it's the process as much as it is the product that's key to the aims, maybe, So, for example, working with homeless people, it's the consistency of the process and the depth of the process, not about just how well we play a gig at the end of that 4-day session, for example. So, I think it takes some time for these things to foster and to grow, and they need to be given the right space for it to grow.
Sure. You started in Guildhall, worked loads in the UK. You're teaching students in the Netherlands. You did it in The Hague. You're now on the staff in Groningen for the NIPE Masters. This is New Audiences Innovative Practice, pretty progressive thinking masters in several schools in Europe. So you have quite a lot of experience. What have you learned throughout these years? What does a workshop facilitator need to have in terms of skills? Like, how have you developed as well?
I developed step by step, and I've developed by panicking, and I've developed by kind of exploiting that panic to try and get some fun out of it, and taking myself into risky situations, not physically necessarily, but definitely psychologically, and enjoying that and learning from it and trying again. And I don't use the word failing, but not achieving what I thought I should be doing, and then going back again and making my bridge a little higher.
Nice. That's good. That's a good answer.
Yeah.
Does it? Because you're a drummer, producer. You own a record label with your buddy Joe, WW Records.
WW Records?
Yeah. So your artistic practice is quite widespread. You're a musical entrepreneur of sorts, I'd say. How does the workshopping, the facilitating, does it have any feedback back on your artistic life?
Yeah, absolutely. It's totally tied in. And that's where that balance must come. And then I think also that's what takes making a workshop facilitator.
Yeah.
Like those identities that you need is to be a practitioner, someone practicing, someone engaged with making art.
Yeah.
And we do that, our discipline is music and our language is music, and it's a huge, broad, beautiful language, and there should be exploration to that all the time, and this endeavour to keep on learning, and also identifying your expertise. You know, I think it's important as a workshop facilitator to be well versed in a library of musical skills. You know, you need to definitely be have some rhythmic aptitude and melodic aptitude and harmonic aptitude.
Yeah.
And even lyrical aptitude, you know, it's but a lot of this actually comes from experiential learning and then just self-exploration. I'm sure we all listen to songs, you know, well, we know lyrics, and it's not that hard then to be able to work out how someone else wrote lyrics, or how you would endeavour to get somebody else that might be good at writing lyrics to write lyrics. I am not a lyric writer, but most of my projects involve facilitating lyric writing, and I've learned a whole heap from that in terms of lyric writing, so I can now advise people when I work on my professional projects, my other art projects, on that process, or I like this or I don't like that, or have some critical judgment with some authority, because I'm all the time dealing with lyric writing. And so, you know, these skills, they come step by step, but it's important to focus on developing that. And for example, this fear of improvisation, well, what is improvisation? You know, it simply starts at you sat at your instrument being, this sounds great. That one note sounds great, and then you add another, and what is an improvisation? So there's a lot of fear that also can be worked on. Yeah.
Good. That's it. I think I'm gonna cut it short, make it short and sweet.
Good,
thank you so much for talking. I'm gonna link up all the links for your music, the night, everything you're endeavoring, and any last words you might send out there into the world.
Well, I definitely say I think it's time for us all to start cooperating and collaborating more on making music together and working out a new landscape of that, and working out a new professional landscape. And if you want to be a professional, you should be able to be a professional, and the industry needs to assimilate itself more, stabilise maybe a little bit more. And if you don't want to be a professional but you still want to play music, you should be allowed to do that without feeling that you can't because you're not good enough, or not having the right structures available and venues available, and all the rest of it.
Break down some of the unnecessary structures out there.
Yeah, man, totally. It's a good future.
Yes.
Yo.
Okay.
Pleasure.
Cut.
Ciao.